It all began 30 years ago when the sky tore open and a massive horde of monsters poured in from another world. This event was called the Rush, and to fight back, humans awakened a job, entering the era of job change. This awakening helped humans finally repel the monsters, but after successfully repelling them, another problem arose, ushering humans into the age of a class divide. This class divide was between magic and physical jobs, as magic users became the final bosses of humanity. They ruled with an iron fist while everyone else in the physical class was demoted to the status of commoners. From then onwards, jobs that couldn't utilize magic were treated like trash and cast off. However, in all this, one boy still believed that one day, sword classes would rise and take center stage. That boy is Emery, a transferee from Earth who suddenly found himself in this strange world. 3 years ago, Emery was taken in by commoner parents, and although they were poor, they raised him with so much love. One day, as Emery prepares to participate in the job change, his parents hand him an old rusty sword. Emery's father then apologizes for not being able to give him anything better since they're practically dirt poor. They promise to work harder for more money to buy Emery magic gear and send him to the best schools. Even so, Emery is touched by their gift, and his father believes that Emery has a special soul, even though he comes from a commoner background. He then urges Emery to keep striving to become the strongest in the world. Emery is moved by his father's words, but the world right now doesn't favor commoners in any way. Despite the big change this world has experienced, humanity's outdated and twisted nature remains the same. The nobles with magic look down from their pedestal and believe that strength and power are decided solely by bloodline. Emery's reality is a world where the strong show off their so-called noble status by constantly trampling on the weak. However, Emery believes that they can never obtain true strength, no matter how noble their bloodline or talent is. As he caressed the old rusty sword from his poor parents, Emery could feel something that the nobles would never be able to tap into, no matter how hard they try. He felt it the moment his father handed him that sword, and that thing is an unreachable fire called the soul. This was the ultimate power that surpassed even magic. After checking out his sword, Emery thanks his parents for the sword and reassures them that he never blamed them for being poor. Tapping his father on the shoulder, Emery assures him that this one sword is enough, and with this sword, he promises to become the strongest in the world. He then lets them know that they gave him the most precious thing in the world right now. With that, Emery says he's ready to become the strongest, and promises never to let his parents suffer anymore. Determined to leave his mark in the world with a rusty sword, Emery vows to become the strongest just as his father hoped. But all these are just his dreams because he must awaken a useful job. On the day of the job change, several students gather in an arena to awaken their jobs, and one of them is Emery. As Emery is called to the stage, an excited chatter erupts in the crowd with everyone looking forward to what he will awaken. This is because Emery is the top of the school in both academics and martial arts, so he was known as the rising star among commoners. Even as a jobless novice, he passed every single physical exam and scored an S rank in swordsmanship, which is considered an insane feat. However, the nobles feel differently and believe that Emery will always be trash because of his commoner status. Kamabara, one of the smug nobles, loudly remarks that there can never be a genius commoner, and all that is just the commoner's fantasy. He tells everyone that no matter how good Emery's grades are, he's still trash with D-rank magic, since the job one gets during the change depends on their aptitude. Kamabara assures them that Emery will definitely pull a trash low mana job, since he's only good with a sword. Annoyed with Kamabara's comment, some of the commoners angrily grit their teeth at him, but when Kamabara notices this, he barks at them to move away from the nobles, cursing them for being lowlifes. After barking, he continues crushing their spirit, telling them that swords are outdated and clinging to them is why commoners will never crawl out of the gutters. Another smug noble chimes in, saying that even if Emery somehow awakens an S-rank job, it will only be a brief, fleeting dream, as he would never amount to anything. At this point, the commoners are pissed off, but the dude continues to trample on their pride, telling them that the chosen ones will never come from the commoners. He then tells them to stop dreaming because a commoner will remain a commoner for life. Meanwhile, at the stage, as Emery finally places his hand on the system, a blinding light explodes, leaving everyone shocked for a moment. However, the next second, a D-rank swordsman pops up on the screen, killing the excitement caused by the golden light. It was a case of a false alarm, and Emery had awakened the worst job possible. The commoners, especially, are disappointed since Emery was their last hope of clinging to the idea of turning their lives around. They believe that if someone hailed as a genius could awaken a trash job, then there's definitely no hope for them. A few commoners soon begin wailing, asking if they're truly stuck at the bottom of the pyramid, no matter how hard they work. On the opposite side, the nobles are thrilled with this development because it confirms that they were right and commoners will always be trash beneath them. Kamibara relishes the moment to mock Emery for thinking he was the chosen one, only to be awakened as a D-rank swordsman. This was not just any trash job, but it was the absolute lowest on the list. Despite this, Emery grins at the system window as if pleased with this result. Turning to the crowd, Emori proudly lets them know that this isn't his end, and since he planned on sticking to the sword, even a D-rank trash job is a perfect start for him. After everyone has awakened their jobs, the host announces that the rookie trial will begin shortly. He explains that their results in this trial will determine their admission to Ryujin University and their ranking after enrollment. One of the nobles assures Kamabara that everyone gets into the university except for the one in last place. Kamabara is happy to hear this and believes that Emori will certainly be in last place since he's the only commoner participating in the rookie trials this year. The host then announces that he'll be giving them their starting equipment and tells them to step forward once their name is called. The first person he calls is Yuki Makusawa, a popular noble with an S-rank magic evaluation. She also awakened an S-rank seraphim as her job during the change, and she has been hailed as an SSS-rank genius, so Yuki is basically one of the so-called chosen ones. When she arrives, Yuki tells the host that she wants the ice element elf bow, and the host immediately pulls it out. Next, he calls Emori, who immediately demands a sword, leaving the other commoners disappointed. The host then informs Emori that, as a D-rank trash, he can only choose from the D-rank area, which is the physical area. He then pulls out an old rusty sword and hands it to Emori, saying it's perfect for him even though it has been collecting dust for years. The host smugly tells him to be careful not to break it, and the nobles begin to taunt Emori, telling him to just throw it away once the trial is over since the sword is trash. One of them tells Emori that even though the sword is a weapon from the dungeons, it's still just scrap metal without any magic reinforcement. Ven, the smug noble from earlier, proudly brandishes his masterclass thunder hammer, boasting that it unleashes 100,000 volts in one strike. He further adds that a strike from the hammer will leave his opponent paralyzed for a minute, even if they survive. He then lets Emori know that no sane person would use a non-elemental sword in the trials. However, Emori ignores all that noise as he tests the sword and notes that it has a good balance, which makes it easy to swing. As a commoner from the very bottom of society, treasures such as divine artifacts and enchanted weapons that nobles proudly flaunt are nothing more than distant dreams. But what no one knows is that a commoner can take a plain old wooden stick and, with the sheer power of imagination, turn it into the strongest weapon. This is what Emori believes, and he plans to show them what he can do with an old rusty sword. Soon afterward, as the bus drives the participants into the Whispering Woods for the trial, the host reads out the rules of the game. He explains that the forest is inhabited by monsters corrupted by otherworldly energy. However, he reassures them that they have nothing to fear since the monsters are all low level. Since the monsters are at most level 1 or 2, he lets the students know that they can defeat them with their job's strength. As soon as they arrive at the gateway of the Whispering Woods, the students are informed that they can form a party for their safety. For those who decide to form parties, the host explains that any points earned will be distributed based on contribution, and final ranking will be determined by individual points at the end of the trial. As Emori steps forward to enter the gateway, some nobles begin taunting him for trying to sneak in alone just to avoid embarrassment. Some mention that it's simply because no one would form a party with him because of his status. Another then mentions that no one wants to team up with someone guaranteed to finish dead last. Just then, Yuki asks Emori if he plans to head in alone. Emori says yes, and he explains that he isn't accustomed to working as part of a team, and since nobody is interested in partnering with him anyway, going solo works out perfectly. Yuki is impressed as she mentions that Emori is a lone wolf who loves taking risks just like herself. Since they're alike, Emori remarks that they'll be facing off against each other soon, and with that, he strolls in while the nobles grit their teeth at his audacity. On his way inside the forest, Emori thinks about the trial, which is his first step to entering Ryujin University. The nobles already have the upper hand by using their resources to equip themselves with magic-reinforced gear. This gives them the edge, allowing even amateurs to instantly power up. But for Emori, it was different. In contrast, his only weapon is an old rusty sword with an attack power of 1. Emori's system even warns him that the weapon has a 1% chance of breaking during an attack. But Emori doesn't care about this. And as Yuki watches him stepping into the gate, she wonders where his confidence comes from. For him to strut into the Whispering Woods with nothing but a broken sword puzzled her. Yuki wonders whether Emori's confidence is because he has an S-rank swordsmanship. This S-rank swordsmanship is said to be extremely difficult, but it is considered the most worthless. After mulling it over for a while, Yuki concludes that Emori, with just his physical class, cannot survive in a world dominated by magic. Meanwhile, as Emori steps through the gate, a faint grin spreads across his face. He can already imagine what everyone is saying about him, that he's just another loser chasing an impossible dream, hoping to become the hero of some classic comeback story. But Emori doesn't see himself that way, and he firmly believes that true strength is not determined by status or wealth. He believes that it is forged through unwavering conviction. Emori then vows to inherit the commoner's soul, become the strongest, and reclaim the honor of the swordsman. Speaking about magic weapons, they're enhanced weapons infused with mana, containing high-level magic circuits. Whereas the commoner's elemental iron swords and wooden shields are nothing compared to magic weapons. Basically, the greatest strength of a magic weapon is that the magic energy imbued within the weapon allows a single swing to unleash magic of unimaginable destructive power. Unlike swordsmanship, no technique is required, and it is basically the ultimate power-up that can be bought with wealth and connections. And one of these magic weapons is the one Ven, the smug noble, is currently using in the Whispering Woods to effortlessly crush level 2 monster wolves. After taking them down, Ven boasts as he curses the wolves for being weaklings. He then does a little victory dance as he shows off the weapon to his other noble friends, Ortho and Lance. Another, a mage in a white cloak, praises Ven for being strong and notes that expensive weapons truly make the difference in strength. Ortho mentions that for a beginner dungeon, Ven's hammer could probably breeze through the whole place without any problems. Ven proudly lets them know that his father had a state-level blacksmith custom make the hammer, which is a B-rank magic weapon. He even boasts that he can take down level 3 monsters in a single strike with his hammer. The blonde noble, Lance, who uses magic blades, begins to boast, saying their party is definitely the strongest, taking the rookie trial. He assures his group that the top 3 on the leaderboard are theirs for the taking. Suddenly, Ortho tumbles into the bush where he notices a pile of wolf corpses on the other end. Ortho shrieks at the sight and darts back in shock, wondering who took out the wolves. Even though the Whispering Woods are teeming with monsters, taking out this many in such a short time is absolutely insane. Lance then rushes to his side to scan nearby as he wonders whether another stronger party beat them to it. Wondering if there could be a dark horse in the rookie trial, Ortho quickly scans the surroundings with magic detection. But after scanning, he announces that there are no traces of magic, which means it was done by a pure physical class. However, Ortho still refuses to believe that someone with a physical class can make it this far deep into the forest. Just then, Emery arrives, telling the group to back off from his spoils and hunt elsewhere. Ven starts laughing at him in disbelief and refuses to believe that commoner trash like Emori killed hundreds of wolves with his broken sword. He then barks angrily at Emori, reminding him that physical attacks can't pierce the monster's defense. Ven then swears that the corpses were probably left behind by some powerful mage, and Emori is just a passerby trying to claim credit. Ortho decides to check one of the corpses with magic detection and notes that there is a faint trace of a wind element left on its wound. He then reveals that the wind element is from the 4th tier magic known as Kamitachi. Turning to face Emori, Ortho asks him if he unleashed a Kamitachi with that broken trashy sword. But Emori explains that he simply swung the sword fast enough to slice the air, and the shockwave from it did the rest. However, Ven refuses to believe Emery's tall tale as he angrily yells that Emery is trying to mock them. Ven believes that creating such a magic isn't something a commoner swordsman can do, but Emery lets Ven know that his idea of common sense is truly limited. This pisses Ven off, and just as he's trying to curse at Emery, the monster wolf almost attacks him from behind. Lance and Ortho quickly call out to him to watch out, but Ven's reaction time is non-existent. Luckily for him, before the wolf can take his head, Emery swiftly slashes the wolf's neck, ending it in one strike. Ven freezes up on the spot in disbelief, wondering whether he was imagining the whole thing. On the surface, it seemed like Emori didn't even swing his sword, yet a sword appeared out of thin air and slashed the wolf dead. After considering it for a moment, Ven refuses to acknowledge that Emori did that. Instead, he chooses to believe that the monster somehow ran straight into Emery's sword. This is because after the rush, monsters in this world gained a high resistance to physical damage. Due to this resistance, when weak, close-range physical classes attack, the damage displayed by the system window is 0. This eventually became the major reason for the fall of physical classes, and they were mocked as trash. However, Emery is different from the normal physical classes because his talent is sword synchro. This talent is for those who are one with the sword, therefore his sword attacks ignore all resistance and buffs, dealing actual damage. Basically, when one awakens a job, they're granted a talent, and the one granted to Emery is a passive talent that cancels out enemy buffs and deals damage strictly based on pure physical laws. Even if Emery goes up against a king-class monster with overwhelming defense, he can defeat it as long as it has the concept of HP. Shortly afterward, Emori prepares to leave, but Ven stops him. Since Emery claims to have defeated hundreds of monsters, Ven accuses him of hogging all the points that should have been theirs. Emery is confused as he asks what Ven means by hogging points. Ven then explains that the number of low-level monsters is limited, so the more Emery hunts them, the fewer points other participants can get. Since Emery is already guaranteed to take last place in the trial, Ven tells him that there is no need for him to gather points. Apparently, no matter how high his points are, he will still be given last place because of his commoner status. Emery treats Ven's words as ignorant rants and advises him to check the leaderboard. However, Ven refuses to bother with that and explains that all of Emery's points will be treated as cheating and reverted to 0 even if he manages to survive until the end of the trial. He then confidently declares that the ultimate rule is that commoners need to know their place and lose to nobles without putting up a fight. The next moment, Lance swiftly appears behind Emori with a dagger to his throat, telling him to hand over all his points and immediately forfeit the trial. From behind them, Ortho uses magic to bind Emori's hand, preventing him from making a move. Emery struggles to get out of it, but Lance lets him know that he cannot resist magic with his bare body. He explains that the binds are made by Ortho's mana chain, so getting out of it is impossible. Emery then remarks that anyone else facing such an impossible situation would have surrendered. Hearing this, Ven is pleased that Emery seems to be getting the hang of this helpless situation. But the next moment, a grin spreads across Emery's face as he lets them know that he's not just anyone. Lance is pissed that Emery is mocking them while Ven decides to show him the might of his thunder hammer. He then boasts that erasing Emori in the process will just be treated as an accident. As Ven prepares to make his move, lightning crackles around the hammer. But before he can make a move, a strange growl echoes through the forest, spooking him. Ven quickly scans from side to side, wondering where the sound is coming from. Lance also notes that the growl is heavier than that of an ordinary wolf monster, meaning whatever that is, it must be quite powerful. Suddenly, a warning goes off, informing the participants that an unknown elite monster has appeared in the core area of the Whispering Woods. The trial rules are also updated, informing them that defeating the elite monster earns them 10,000 points and a legendary item. However, any death during the fight will result in immediate disqualification. Soon afterward, Emori senses that the elite monster has finally located them, and it suddenly leaps right next to Ven. Emery lets the group know that all their barking must have drawn the monster straight to this area. As the huge elite monster growls, it turns out to be a level 5 wolf lord. Ven is excited to see this and informs his party that taking down the elite monster will make them rich. He then orders Lance to attack first with his frost dual dagger to slow down the monster while he and Ortho finish it off. Lance confidently charges forward with his frostblade, thinking this should be easy, but the monster effortlessly pushes him back without even moving a muscle. Ven is utterly shocked as Lance is thrown into the distance like a rubber flying saucer. Ortho is also shocked that the monster did that with a single hit, convincing him that this is way too hard for a normal trial and someone might actually die for real. Emery then calls out to Ortho, telling him to quickly release the mana chain, but Ven stops him, telling Ortho that they need to run and use Emery as bait to buy time for their escape. Ortho agrees, and Ven tells him that they need to run on the count of 3, but the next moment Ven darts off alone, abandoning the team. He already planned to run without them since more bait increases his chances of getting out alive. While Ven makes his escape, Ortho's mana chain dissipates when he goes to help Lance up. While Ortho tries to hurry out with Lance, Emori prepares to fight the monster. He's even excited to find what he considers a worthy opponent in a beginner dungeon. Emery plans to use this fight to test his power and take the first step toward his goal of becoming the strongest. Just as the monster tries to chase after Ven, Emori charges forward to test the monster's strength. He then strikes the monster with his blade, but the monster blocks the attack with its paws before pushing Emori backwards. From this, Emery notes that his strike did not do any damage, making him conclude that the monster is extremely tough. Meanwhile, the monster is enraged by Emori's attack and immediately counterattacks him. As it lunges forward to claw at him, Emery realizes that the monster's speed has increased considerably. He manages to block the attack with his rusty old sword but is almost crushed by the monster's insane power. As Emori struggles under his blade, he questions whether level 5 monsters are usually this strong. Soon, he starts worrying as his blade begins to crack under the pressure. At the same time, Ven stops fleeing, and as he turns around to check on the others, he is stunned to see Emery going head-to-head with the so-called elite monster. Ven can't believe that Emery is trying to block an attack from the Wolf Lord, which is basically supposed to be a death sentence for others. At some point, Emery begins to crumble under the Wolf Lord's power, but he refuses to back down. Emery's combat instinct is soon activated just as the monster prepares to finish him. This combat instinct is a state he reached during his S-rank swordsmanship evaluation. Apparently, this instinct awakened the moment his fear reached its peak. Before the Wolf Lord can crush him, Emori enters the same state, giving him the power to free his blade from the monster's grip. Afterwards, he begins to recite a sword chant, causing his fighting spirit to rise. Because of this, Emori activates his talent, Sword Synchro, and from the system window, it is revealed that Emori and his sword have achieved resonance, gaining a 100 times boost. Once the buff takes effect, Emori effortlessly chops off one of the Wolf Lord's arms. Emori is surprised by the extra boost from the Sword Synchro activation and notes that it's stronger than he thought. Pleased with the effect, he decides to go all out because, for him, losing was never an option. However, before Emori can make his next move, the monster enters rage mode and goes berserk as it lunges forward, determined to take Emori's head. Emori manages to dodge the attack, but the monster continues to chase after him relentlessly, ready to attack. After managing to dodge for a while, Emori delivers a powerful punch under the monster's jaw. Realizing that the Sword Synchro effect also boosted his fist, Emori delivers yet another punch, smashing the Wolf Lord into the ground right past Ven. Ven is so stunned that his legs refuse to budge when he tries to run. And as Emori heads towards him, Ven is embarrassed that a commoner saw him in such a pathetic state. When Emori finally walks up and glares at him, Ven instantly falls silent, terrified of the guy he was looking down on a few minutes ago. Looking at Ven like roadside trash, Emori sternly tells him to get out of the way. Ven is so terrified of Emery's expression that he finds it hard to believe that this is the same dude from before. Besides, the aura around him is completely different from what Ven remembers, making him admit that Emery is like a different person. Ven quickly shifts to the side, and as Emery walks right past him with a darkened expression, Ven concludes that our guy is Demon. Meanwhile, Emery heads straight towards the monster and leaps into midair, plunging his rusty sword into the Wolf Lord. The moment he finishes the beast, a sense of exhaustion washes through him as the buff from earlier wears off. Because he used too much power, Emori enters a stunned state and begins to feel dizzy. He had unknowingly pushed past his body's limit because of the endless surge of fighting spirit from the sword synchro effect. Now that his body has reached its limit and sword synchro has worn off, Emery was exhausted to the point where he was unable to move a muscle. A few moments later, Ven sneaks up behind him, and even though Emery can't move, he senses the snake before it even speaks. Ven then holds his thunder hammer over Emery's head as he admits that Emery is truly a genius. Refusing to let a commoner loser crawl his way out of the slums, Ven prepares to finish him off, but suddenly pauses when Emery asks if he's not afraid of a counterattack. Ven is terrified to hear this, but as Emery coughs up blood, his confidence is immediately renewed. He then admits he's afraid of dying, but Emery was so focused on playing the hero that he left himself exposed. Ven taunts Emery for not being able to move at all, explaining that he's just going to take the opportunity to end him and make it look like the elite monster did it. As the sole witness of this carefully crafted script, Ven declares that he's going to be the undisputed #1 of the rookie trial. With that, he lifts his thunder hammer, and as he prepares to strike, Emori's will to stay alive reawakens. Refusing to die from a sneak attack by a coward, Emori manages to block Ven's strike with his sword. As he struggles under the pressure from the thunder hammer, Emori vows to protect his pride as a swordsman. At the same time, Ven is determined to crush that pride as he yells, telling Emori that it's futile to keep struggling. He then decides to put more pressure while telling Emery to just accept death like the commoner trash he is. However, as Emery begins to crumble under the weight of the hammer, a miracle happens and Ven's head is instantly detached from his body. It turns out that the Wolf Lord, who was supposed to be dead, had suddenly regained consciousness, and poor Ven just had to be the first one he saw. Meanwhile, Emery, who hasn't seen the monster behind him, immediately senses an eerie atmosphere as a terrifying silence suddenly fills the forest. From behind him, he could feel the presence of a true predator, waiting to end him. Emery soon realizes that the eerie aura around him, coming from the monster, is blood rage. Speaking about blood rage, it is a state where an elite monster near death breaks its limits, unleashing attack power far beyond normal. Emery realizes that the monster was just playing dead to bide its time and trick him into letting his guard down. Unfortunately, before it could make its move, Ven tried to steal its prey, becoming the unfortunate one. Fortunately, this also worked out in Emery's favor because now the stun and fatigue on his body have worn off, allowing him to stand up against the Wolf Lord. Emery then prepares to counterattack and notes that the state of blood rage significantly drops the monster's defense, making it possible for him to find a weak spot when the monster attacks. For anyone else, this would be considered a crisis, but Emori sees it as his biggest chance. Emery then turns to face the monster, and as he plunges his blade into the earth, he begins to recite another chant to willpower into his blade. The monster then charges straight towards him, but Emery swiftly darts to the right with the sword still firmly in the ground. As it tries to attack him a second time, Emery activates Sword Synchro, and with an earth-drawing slash, he pulls the sword from the ground, swiftly slicing the Wolf Lord into two. After the Wolf Lord is defeated, Emori is immediately credited with the promised 10,000 points. Soon afterward, Yuki rushes to the scene while requesting backup from B-rank or higher job holder squads. She informs them on the radio that there has been a monster outbreak and one noble student has been confirmed dead. Emori, on the other hand, is about to pass out, but he's relieved to see Yuki, and as soon as she gets to the scene, he finally collapses. Shortly after, the trial ends and the results are displayed on a big screen for everyone to see. Emery scores a total of 10,300 points, securing first place, while Yuki comes in second with 419 points. The crowd is shocked as they begin to wonder who Emery is, and before long, someone realizes that he was the commoner with a D-rank swordsman job. One dude points out that the first place in last year's rookie trial only scored 300 points. They are even more shocked that he scored way higher than Yuki, an S rank. Meanwhile, Kamabara angrily argues that the system must have a bug and advises the officials to check properly. He points out that a commoner cannot be in first place because that undermines the pride of nobles. Before long, the nobles begin to protest, complaining that Emery definitely cheated. While the crowd demands that Emori's score be cancelled, the host speaks to someone from a communication orb, after which he announces that an unfortunate accident occurred during the rookie trial. He reveals that monsters went berserk in the core area of the Whispering Woods and killed two nobles, while one of them sustained minor injuries. Kamibara is shocked by this news and tries to find out the identities of the dead nobles. But the host ignores all questions as he continues to report the news. According to the report, the survivor, Emery, defeated the level 5 elite monster that caused the incident and acquired a massive amount of points. Everyone is shocked to hear this, and they find it unbelievable that a D-rank trash defeated an elite monster. One of them even suggests that Emery probably stole the kill while the monster was already dying. Another noble questions if the points are still valid if they were earned at the cost of noble lives. While all this commotion is going on, Emery sits under a tree a few feet away from the crowd, completely shutting out the noise. Just then, Yuki approached him, asking if he truly defeated the level 5 elite wolf lord. She demands to know the details, but Emery simply says he just got lucky. He explains that he was just swinging his blade around and the wolf lord happened to fall on it. However, Yuki still finds the whole thing bizarre because she studied the scene, and there was no magic reaction from the sword marks left behind. After her observation, she concluded that the wounds on the monster were made by pure physical strikes. She suspects that Emery defeated the wolf lord all by himself and begins to analyze how it happened accurately. Yuki points out that Ven and his gang must have tried to either steal the final blow or do something shady to Emery. Unfortunately, they were the ones first targeted by the berserk wolf lord. As soon as she finishes her analysis of the incident, Emori quickly denies it, telling her that that is solely her speculation. Yuki then asks why he's not defending himself in front of everyone, but Emori lets her know that it's pointless, since they've already made up their minds to use him as the scapegoat. He explains that he doesn't want to waste his breath fighting against their petty prejudice at this point. Emery then pulls out his sword, telling Yuki that he can still prove his worth even with an old rusty sword discarded in a trash pile. He then declares that strength always speaks for itself in the end. Back on the stage, one of the examiners advises the chief examiner to cancel Emori's scores to appease everyone's anger since he's just a commoner with inferior talent. By the unanimous decision of the examiners, the host immediately announces that Emery's score has been canceled. The noble crowd is excited to hear this news, especially Kamabara, who proudly remarks that lowly commoners should know their place instead of trying to rank first. As soon as Emery's scores are canceled, the scoreboard changes and Yuki takes the top spot. Just as the host is about to announce those who passed the trial and gained admission into Ryujin University, the system glitches and Emery ends up making the cutoff. Everyone is completely shocked by this bizarre development. They can't understand how he still made the passing line with 0 points. Even the examiners are lost, while others speculate that it might be another system bug. Just then, the host notices that a lot of applicants below the passing line have negative scores. Suddenly, the real rules of the trial are projected on the screen, revealing that actions such as stabbing an ally or combat interference will result in point deduction, and depending on the situation, a negative score will be issued. The system then displays the names of the participants who committed serious rule violations that resulted in negative scores. From the list, Emori realizes that the passing grade dropped to 0 because of Ven and his group, who tried to ambush him and other nobles who had backstabbed themselves. Emery is pleased with how he managed to slip through the cracks and admits that luck is truly on his side. Suddenly, Kamabara approaches him to talk trash as usual and lets Emery know that getting into Ryujin University will not change his life. Trying to make him give up on his own, Kamabara tells Emery that Ryujin is hell for commoners, and without any backing, Emery won't even last a few months. However, Emery isn't bothered and looks forward to this so-called hell. He then declares that he wants to see if this hell can even keep up with him. As Emery walks away, he taunts the nobles, telling them that he can't wait to crush them at the university. A few days later, Emori arrives at Ryujin University's School Gate Plaza and realizes that the school has 2 different class badges to separate commoners and nobles. The commoners wear a circular silver badge, while the smug nobles wear an elegant gold shield-shaped one. In the distance, Emery notices Kamabara and his lackey picking on a commoner because he tried to use the school's main gate instead of the small side gate meant for commoners. The guy in a suit demands to know why the commoner is trying to walk through the same gate meant for nobles. Kamabara then sternly points to the side gate, telling the commoner that he belongs there. Just as the guy is about to use the side gate, Kamabara stops him, telling the commoner to strip and crawl through the gate naked. He claims that this is meant to clean him up before entering the school because his filthy clothes would ruin the atmosphere and cause a school violation. He then grabs the guy by the shirt as he reminds him that nobles and commoners live in different worlds. He explains that crawling into the side gate naked is a ritual that nobles in the school went out of their way to set up for commoners. But before Kamabara can get his way, someone stops him and grabs his hand. Kamabara immediately turns around to see that it's Emori, but he doesn't recognize him at first until Emery jogs his memory by introducing himself. Realizing it's the D-rank trash from the rookie trial, Kamabara immediately pulls away from Emori's grip. He can't believe Emori actually ignored his warning and still showed up to the school. Grinning like a maniac, Kamabara tells Emori to strip, put on a collar, and crawl through the commoner's gate, explaining that it is how commoners enroll at Ryujin, and Emery is not an exception. Emery stands his ground, telling Kamabara that all students who earn their admission through real strength have the right to use the main gate. He then points out that the side gate is perfect for the nobles, who are just a bunch of empty loudmouths covered in expensive gear. White Suit Guy is infuriated by this comparison, while Kamabara simply finds Emori's confidence amusing. He can't believe that a lowly commoner dares to talk back to a noble. White Suit Guy immediately sneaks up behind Emery, while Kamabara stretches his arm to tackle him from the front. He declares that at Ryujin, nobles have the authority to discipline commoners by force without facing any charges, even though they break a few bones. While the idiot mouths off, Emori is already fed up with the whole noise because it's only day one, and the smug bastards have started throwing their weight around. He mocks them for being pathetic slobs who bully the weak just to feel powerful and superior. He then lets them know that they're nothing but empty shells, and without their family backing, they become less than human. Kamabara is pissed by Emori's words, making him look forward to crushing him more than ever. Emori then orders them to come at him at the same time since his words seem to hit their sore spots. He promises to teach them a lesson and educate them on behalf of their mannerless parents. As Emori prepares to put them in their place, he sternly declares that he will return to them 100-fold the pain they inflicted on others and the one they tried to inflict on him. The nobles watching the whole scene unfold are shocked by Emori's confidence. Kamabara then lunges at him, swearing to tear him apart, but before he can even land a hit, Emori effortlessly punches the idiot into oblivion. The punch pushes Kamabara straight through the very gate he claimed was reserved for commoners and slams him into a nearby fence. He is immediately knocked out, and as Emori turns around, the suit guy instantly recoils in fear. The spectators are stunned as they try to figure out what the hell just happened. They can't believe a D-rank swordsman did that with just his bare fist, meaning if he actually used a sword, it would be more devastating. After handling the roadside trash, Emori confidently walks away, and everyone watches him in silence, and as admiration fills their hearts, they begin cheering for him. Even a few nobles are moved as everyone cheers, praising Emori for putting the school terrors in their place. Emori is a bit pleased with the 5 minutes of fame, even though he didn't mean to stand out on his first day. Afterwards, he heads into the school through the main gate with a smile across his face. A few moments later, he arrives at his dorm, where his chubby roommate cheerfully greets him. The boy introduces himself as Tsuyoshi Matsuoka, nicknamed Bucho. The duo then shakes hands as Emori also introduces himself, after which Bucho grabs him by the neck as if they've known each other for a long time. Bucho tells Emori that Ryujin University is called hell for commoners because it is practically crawling with nobles. He reveals that things are about to change because a hero for commoners has joined the school. Bucho then asks if Emori heard about the incident at the school gate. Emori hesitates to answer when he realizes that Bucho must be talking about what he did to Kamibara. Thinking Emori didn't witness the incident, Bucho excitedly narrates how the hero nearly snapped Kamibara's neck with a single punch. He's even more excited as he describes the look on the nobles' faces when the hero humiliated them. Emori is surprised that the story has been highly exaggerated, but still, he admits that he did take down Kamibara with a single blow. However, he believes it is because the idiot was way weaker than he expected. Meanwhile, Bucho continues to praise the so-called hero of the commoners and swears to become just like the hero. With determination, he vows to defeat the bad guys and save people just as the hero did today. Bucho then tells Emori that he's a B-rank paladin and asks about Emori's rank. When Emori casually reveals that he's a D-rank swordsman, Bucho is stunned. He can't believe that Emori made it into the school with such a low rank and figures he must have worked insanely hard to get here. As a man of honor, Bucho decides to protect him and he tells Emori to stick with him. He boasts that he's a B rank, so Emori can just use his name if he ever comes across any bullies. Emori is amused by this and can't help but laugh awkwardly at the naive dude. As a terrible team player, Emori loathes teaming up with anyone, which is why he trained alone all this time. But now that Bucho was getting all chummy with him, it felt strange to Emori. He notes that telling the truth right now might complicate his life, and since he wants a peaceful path to becoming the strongest, Emori decides to play dumb around Bucho. Somewhere in a hospital, Kamibara is still nursing his wounds when his family's butler brings news from the head of the house. Kamibara is instructed to handle this minor incident by himself without disturbing the family. Kamibara is pissed to hear this and curses Emori for humiliating him. He then orders the butler to use every resource available at the university to end Emori within 1 week. The butler accepts the assignment and promises to eliminate Emori under the guise of an accident. Still enraged by the humiliation he suffered, Kamibara vows to be there to watch Emori get torn apart. Later on, at the university's training grounds, the students are gathered in preparation for their class. Bucho urges Emori to keep his head down during the whole process because he's heard that the instructor, Benjamin Lee, does nothing but pick on commoners. Moments later, Benjamin climbs up to the stage to introduce himself and let the students know that he will be the one in charge. He tells them that his class is based on meritocracy, so he has no choice but to weed out the weak. While addressing the students, he spots Emori in the crowd, and he remembers the instruction he was given to make sure Emori is expelled from the school. Benjamin even believes that expulsion is too soft, so he promises to make sure that Emori suffers more than Kamibara did. In fact, he plans to kill Emori for not knowing his place as a commoner. Without holding back, he mentions that there is an insect among them who doesn't know his place, while adding that this insect is a D-rank swordsman. The class already knows who he is talking about, but Bucho holds some sense of doubt about him. Just then, Benjamin confirms this by pointing to Emori, and he tells him to prepare for expulsion because his presence alone is annoying to him. Emori argues with the professor, telling him that he might actually be a commoner. But the fact remains that he got into the university based on his own strength. Emery then adds that he is actually interested in Benjamin's meritocracy. Emery is aware of something, which is the fact that in this world, strength is split into two categories, and the first is the boost from leveling up. Basically, one's stats increase with their level, and everyone has an equal chance to grow stronger, regardless of status. The second is the stat correction, which is based on job rank. A high-rank job starts with higher stats compared to low-rank ones. Basically, a level 1 high-rank job has more stats than a level 2 low-rank job. To make it worse, the gap widens as one levels up, and because of this, more resources are poured into high-rank jobs. It is a situation where the strong keep getting stronger, while the weak stay weak forever, so there has never been a chance for a commoner to rise to the top. However, Emery knows that levels and job ranks are not the only measure of strength, and this is because there is a third indicator, which is technique. This is the only advantage that is left for commoners. Benjamin tells Emery to his face that he has to do everything he orders in his class, or else he risks dying. Instead of showing signs of fear, Emery tells the professor that this only makes things interesting for him, and he wants Benjamin to show him what he means by this. Emery says he is curious to know what a practical class in his so-called meritocracy actually looks like. Emery's boldness triggers Benjamin, and he yells at Emery, asking him what gave him the audacity to be able to speak to his senior in such a rude manner. Benjamin decides to teach Emery a lesson, and he tells him that, for the day, he is going to be the class's punching bag because the training dummies are broken. The nobles are already excited at the mere thought of getting the chance to beat up a commoner on their first day. They claim that they have always hated Emery, so this is their chance to teach him a big lesson. Buko fears for Emery's safety, and he urges him to apologize instead of getting baited by Benjamin. Buko urges him to claim that he is sick, so he can take a few days off. Emery tells his friend that he doesn't like the instructor, which is why he actually agrees with this idea of meritocracy. Emery tells Buko that if commoners are to get a chance to be treated equally, they have to win their rights with their own strength. Emery tells Buko that the outcome might be bad, but it is better than not trying at all. Without hesitation, Emery walks to the front, and Benjamin secretly prays that Emery just dies there so everything can be sorted out. To make things worse for Emery, Benjamin tells him to act like a real dummy, so he has to stay unarmed. Benjamin plans to make life difficult for him because a swordsman without a sword is nothing but absolute trash. Emery boldly pushes his sword into the ground, telling Benjamin that he didn't even want to use his sword in the first place. The nobles are all excited at the chance to beat Emery up, and they start volunteering for the task. Benjamin wastes no time picking 3 guys to beat Emery up. Busho is surprised that Benjamin is telling Emery to fight 3 people without having any weapons to protect himself. Benjamin claims that he never said from the start that the fight would be a fair one. Benjamin says he wants to teach Emery that a commoner has to know his place. Emery, on the other hand, is not even worried because he has what it takes to easily handle the trio without too much stress. Suddenly, Buko steps up, telling Benjamin that he is volunteering himself. Benjamin asks him if he wants to join the training to be part of those who will beat Emery up, but Buko says he wants to be Emery's ally. Benjamin finds this really amusing, as he plans to use this to assert more dominance. Emery, on the other hand, is not really cool with the whole change in plans. Buko then tells Emery that the plan is to hold out for 1 minute before surrendering. Buko says that they will be able to save face this way, and they also get to remain in the school. Buko tells Emery that the best he can do is block their attacks, and Emery thanks him for the assistance. Even though Emery had planned to deal with the nobles by himself, he realizes that he has to protect Buko's pride. Even though it is not his style, he knows he has to hold back a bit. Benjamin then starts the match, and Buko quickly puts up a shield to block incoming attacks. Emery is impressed with the fact that Buko is a B-rank defense type, which is pretty rare. As the attacks land and the shield shakes, Buko tells Emery to make sure he stays behind him until the 1 minute is up. As the attacks land, it creates a wave of dust, and Emery quickly figures out that waiting for 1 minute is not practical. Using the dust as cover, Emery dashes toward the attackers, and he knocks them out one after the other. Before they even reach the ground, Emery has returned to where he was. Just then, Emery taps Buko on the shoulder, and Buko asks him if it is over. Emery says yes, and Buko turns to see everyone else on the floor. Buko is left in complete shock, but it appears that Benjamin saw what happened. Benjamin hates the fact that Emery's combat skills are actually impressive, which means he is already used to regular brawls. While Buko is asking Emery what happened, Emery claims that the attackers were so desperate to crush him that they fell to their own sloppy magic. Buko accepts this without even questioning it, and he adds that their mana must have backfired on them. Benjamin then orders that the trio be taken out of the class while using the situation as an example. He decides to ride on Emery's lie by telling the students that in a real fight they must maintain magical stability. The noble students hear this and heave a sigh of relief, just because they don't want to accept the grim reality that Emery must have defeated their peers. Benjamin turns to Emery, asking him if beating 3 rookies proves that he belongs in the university, but Emery stays mute. Benjamin then tells him that the next day is the practical exam in the dungeon, but he lets Emery know that no noble will partner with him. He assures Emery that he is going to be expelled before he even knows it, and Emery assures the dude that he is looking forward to this. Emery completely gets on his nerves by asking him if he met his standards for meritocracy, and this angers the dude, who tells him to make sure he is prepared for the next day, which is the dungeon trial. The following day, the students gather at the dungeon trial site, and Benjamin tells them that the test requires them to clear a normal difficulty dungeon or even higher. He tells them that anyone who fails at this will be expelled, but he lets them know that a new rule has been established to prevent fatal accidents like the ones that happened during the entrance examination. He mentions that they have to form a party of 3 or more, and the party must include a noble. Another instructor backs up this point by revealing that commoners who are not liked by nobles basically have no chance at taking the test. They claim that the rule is to stop commoners from being carried during the test. Bucho quickly offers Emori a chance to team up with him because he has found 2 nobles who want to be on his team. Bucho rushes over to the nobles to introduce his roommate to them, telling them that he will be the one to handle the melee attacks that they need. However, the nobles claim that Emori is a team killer, so there is no way they are teaming up with him. Bucho is shocked when he hears this, and Emori immediately figures out that someone has been spreading rumors about his reputation, and it is most likely Benjamin. Emori knows that Benjamin is aiming to eliminate him without getting his hands dirty by using the new rule. Bucho tries to defend Emori, telling his noble friends that what happened during the entrance examination was nothing but an accident. The nobles let Bucho know that they are willing to let him join their party because his class as a paladin is quite useful. They further make the situation look grim by saying there was once a female student who sent herself to the afterlife because she was rejected by the nobles. With this, they tell Bucho that he obviously knows which side he is supposed to be on, so he should not waste his career because of friendship. Emori is pissed at the rubbish words coming out of their mouths, and he whips out his weapon. He points the weapon at the one wearing blue, and the dude is shocked by Emori's actions. He reminds him that fighting on campus is a punishable offense, and Emori puts fear in them by asking them if they seriously think a team killer like himself is afraid of some stupid punishment. Emori lets them know that they are the ones who should be worried about not throwing their lives away. Just then, the other noble attacks Emori from behind. He punches Emori hard on the back of his head, and even though Emori sensed the attack coming, he intentionally stood there to get hit. Even the attacker is surprised that Emori didn't even attempt to dodge, and Bucho fears for the safety of his friend. However, Emori already got what he wanted, and he reads out the school rule that says the use of offensive magic is prohibited, while adding that the dude's attack just confirmed it. Emori says this basically means that physical attacks that don't use any magic are perfectly fine, and seeing the strange reaction on Emori's face, the dude trembles in fear, asking him what his plans are. His fears are confirmed when Emori dashes toward him at an incredible speed and he delivers a powerful punch that sends the dude flying into the distance. The dude stops only when he hits a wall. His friend is pissed that a commoner like Emori has the boldness to touch a noble, and he tries to attack Emori from behind, using his magic. Before his magic even leaves his hand, Emori grabs his arm and breaks it. He then proceeds to kick him really hard in the tummy, forcing the dude to cough up air. He crashes to the ground in pain while Bucho watches from behind in complete shock. Emori then grabs his sword and makes his way to the dude who just managed to get back on his feet. The dude fears that the second round will be worse than the first, and he tries to scare Emori by calling out his father's name. However, Emori only looks more disgusted, and as he prepares to strike him down, he lets him know that he doesn't care. Just then, Bucho grabs Emori from behind, reminding him that nobles have a complex web of power, so if he attacks the dude right in the university, he will not be able to form a party because they obviously need at least one noble. Emori stares back at him in anger, telling him that he is going to take full responsibility, but Bucho yells at him, reminding him that he is not the only commoner at the school. He says there are rules that they have to follow so that they can stay in the school. Bucho lets him know that his actions will only make life harder for the rest of the commoners. Upon hearing this, Emori finally calms down, and Bucho grabs his head in frustration, saying no noble will want to partner with them after what just happened. Emori then reminds Bucho that he is the one the nobles are avoiding, so he should just stay away from him whenever they are in public, telling him that it is for his own good. Emori walks off, and he thinks about the whole situation. He believes that it is even better if he stays alone because he won't have to hurt those who are close to him if everyone around him is an enemy. Bucho then yells at him from behind, admitting that he is strong because he was able to do something he could never do. However, he tells Emori that he doesn't want him to suffer for it, while reminding him that he has already told him he's going to protect him. Bucho reminds him that if he gets expelled, he won't even get the chance to fix the problem at the root. Bucho's words hit the right spot, and Emori admits that he is right, but he can't believe that Bucho is the one talking sense into him. Bucho excitedly grabs his friend, telling him that they still have a chance of asking around the dungeon entrance for whoever is going to team up with them, because in the end, someone definitely will. Emori thinks to himself that he just has to break the rules guarding the society, but for the moment, he just has to endure whatever they throw at him. With this in mind, Emori concludes that he will just form a party to clear the dungeon to get what he wants. Moments later, they make their way to the dungeon entrance, and Emori is impressed at how the whole thing looks. Just then, the nobles turn their gaze on Emori and Bucho because they have heard how he beat up some of them. The nobles are pissed that Emori and Buko still get the chance to walk around, all thanks to the school rules, because they would have been put in their place if not for that. Even the commoners all turn their backs on them because they don't want to have anything to do with the two. Buko is taken aback by the sight that even commoners are now avoiding them. Emori is not entirely surprised because he knows that sheep always hate the wolf, but if one stays a sheep, they end up getting eaten by the wolf. The two are in the middle of this when they are approached by a redhead noble-class assassin, Shin Kusashi. Bucho is surprised that the dude is approaching them, and he whispers in Emori's ear, telling him that Shin has real strength and was also in the top 50 in the entrance exam. However, Shin has zero popularity. Shin then taps Bucho on the shoulder, telling him to join his party because they need a tank, and Bucho is a paladin. Buko is surprised to hear this, and even the others who are standing around are shocked that Shin has the courage to invite Emori's friend to his party. The nobles are pretty sure that Shin is done for after this. Buko then asks Shin about Emori because they are together, but Shin tells Buko that the only thing they need is a paladin. Without hesitation, Buko refuses the offer, saying Emori is his best friend, so there is no way he is joining a different party. Buko tells Shin that they must join together or he should forget about the offer. Shin then teases Buko, saying he might as well take Emori instead of him because he wonders if his so-called best friend is as loyal as him. Just then, Emori tells Buko to take the opportunity, assuring Buko that he is going to find a way to manage on his own. He adds that it is also his fault that their original plan went to trash. Shin is surprised that Emori is willing to let himself fail and get expelled. Out of curiosity, he asks Emori if he is not going to beg to join the team, and Emori asks him why he should. He tells Shin that it is better if his best friend gets the chance instead. Emori then adds that it is weird the dude showed up when they were about to fail. Shin is surprised that Emori could see through him, and he says he is willing to confess. He claims that he has some information about the dungeon. He mentions that it is a dungeon with incredibly high magic resistance that puts nobles who rely on magic attacks at a major disadvantage. Shin claims that commoners with physical classes are a much better fit, which is why his party needs physical classes with high attack power. Shin boasts that if Emori had tried to sacrifice Buko to join his team, he would have refused to team up with him because someone disloyal is not worthy of a powerhouse like him. Shin points to Emori, telling him that he is different from other commoners, and because of this, he is going to make an exception to let Emori join his party. He tells Emori to be grateful for the opportunity, but Emori reminds him that picking him basically means he is turning his back on the nobles of the school, given his track record. Emori says he is pretty sure that Shin, being a calculating guy, will already know this. Emori stares into Shin's eyes and demands that he give him an actual good reason. Shin pulls back in fear, telling Emori that he is only giving him a chance, so he doesn't think there should be a problem with this. Emori smiles at the dude and says he can clearly figure out that the other nobles are not ready to team up with Shin because the rule of the exam states that commoners must team up with nobles to pass. However, there is a hidden meaning behind this, and it is the fact that nobles who specialize in magic can't pass without teaming up with commoners who use physical attacks. In turn, the rule was created to protect nobles by forcing commoners in physical classes to join their parties. As it stands, Shin has zero popularity among nobles, so it is obvious that no one wants to team up with him. Since the rest of the commoners are trash, Shin really doesn't have the luxury of choice. Emori tells Shin to his face that he is clearly aware that the one who needs to form a party isn't him, but Shin. Shin realizes that his ploy has been figured out, and he urges Emori to keep his voice down because it is pretty embarrassing for a noble to get rejected by commoners. Shin assures Emori that he is going to owe him this favor, so he should just cover his shame. In addition, Emori doesn't really have any other option, just like him. And Emori realizes that Shin is right, so he shakes hands with him to seal the deal. With this, the three of them team up and they immediately form a party. Shin boasts about how he is the leader, so they have to follow his instructions in the dungeon. Buko agrees to this, but Emori lets him know that he is not promising to listen to him. In the back, Benjamin is losing his mind because he didn't expect Shin to come in out of nowhere to ruin his beautiful plan. However, Benjamin is not ready to give up as he plans to make sure that Emori dies in the dungeon alongside his useless teammates. As they prepare themselves for the dungeon, Benjamin shows up to congratulate Emori, telling him that he is so lucky to have had a noble who is ready to partner with him. Emori turns around and asks Benjamin what his excuse will be this time because he knows for sure that he will try to get in his way. Benjamin claims that he has no intention of sabotaging him, telling him that he is just there to congratulate him. Benjamin tells Emori that under the school rules, he has technically earned the right to enter the dungeon, and as a teacher, he doesn't have any reason to stop him. However, he urges Emori to keep a low profile in the dungeon because if he runs into something unexpected, there will be no one to save him. Bucho hears this and tries to raise his voice in protest, but Emori stops him. Emori bravely tells Benjamin that he is actually more worried that the dungeon will be too easy and boring, and this ultimately gets on Benjamin's nerves yet again. With visible anger written on his face, he presents Shin with the key to the dungeon gate since he is the leader of the team. Shin is surprised that they are given an obsidian key since everyone else is getting a mithril key. Benjamin says all the keys were suddenly changed to obsidian keys for this particular exam, and he teases Shin, asking him if he is too scared to use the key he was given. However, Shin assures Benjamin that he is up to the task, but deep down, Benjamin knows that they are done for because the key he gave them is one used in entering a cursed dungeon, which has a pretty great difficulty that any freshman can never clear. He is confident that this is where Emery and his pals will die. Without wasting time, Emery and his team members proceed into the dungeon, which opens up with a bright purple portal. As they step into the rock-like dungeon, Shin quickly steps up, telling the two that since he is the leader, he will be the one to decide their formation. Shin tells Bucho that he is the tank, and he is in the middle of assigning roles when Omori just walks off. Shin yells at him to stop wandering off because of how dangerous dungeons are. Bucho quickly pulls out his shield, and he runs toward Omori with his usual declaration that he is going to protect him. Shin screams from behind, telling them to listen to him, and suddenly, Bucho activates a trap. Out of nowhere, a ton of spiders emerge from all around them, and Buko, the big guy, falls to the ground, cowering in fear because he can't stand bugs. Shin realizes that it is time to shine, and he activates his fire magic. He lunges toward the spiders, cutting them down with fire while using this to boast to his teammates that it is going to be a piece of cake. He soon turns around to see what Emery is doing, and he is shocked to see him kicking the bugs as if they were balls to play with. Shin cannot believe what he is staring at because he knows that grave spiders track their prey using magic detection. This basically means that they target whoever has the strongest mana first, and since Omori hasn't used any magic yet, his mana should be completely full. However, instead of attacking him, the spiders are walking around confused, and this is when it dawns on Shin that there is a possibility that Omori has no mana whatsoever. In the past, Emery had mentioned that he sacrificed all of his magical talent, so he is not going to rely on magic or any other power. He is prepared to become a pure physical class with only the sword. Because of this, he awakened a hidden talent, the Magicless. This causes mana to be permanently set to 0, and his sword skills will also consume HP instead of MP. Emery believes that by completely abandoning other routes, he can grow stronger in every aspect just by training his body. At the same time, Shin wonders how Omori was able to change classes since he has no mana, but the more he thinks about it, the more confused he gets. Just then, Emery yells at Buko, telling him to pull himself together, and Buko quickly gets up to reassert his claim to protect Omori. However, by the time he stands up, he realizes that the spiders have vanished, and Emery lets him know that the spiders actually didn't want to attack them. This leaves Buko confused, since they are supposed to be the enemy monsters that will attack them. Emery then tells them that the trap was actually to trigger something else. Standing in the distance is a cage that has been sealed with chains, and just then, the seal breaks. The cage crashes to the ground, and it opens, giving access to the area boss to emerge from it. The area boss turns out to be Kalus, the Death Denier, who is a level 5 monster with an ugly skull head. Shin freaks out when he sees this because this is supposed to be a hidden boss that only appears by chance. He immediately figures out that they are in this mess because of the key that Benjamin gave them, which means he set them up. Shin had always thought Benjamin was just a crooked teacher, but he didn't expect him to sacrifice a noble just to achieve his target. Bucho is totally clueless, and he asks them if the monster is strong. They let him know that the monster is on a different level from a normal level 5 since it is a cursed elite. Shin says even a fully prepared 5-man party of level 7s will find it hard to take down Kalus. Shin mentions that for them to have run into such a monster when they are just level 3 shows how unlucky they are. In fact, he believes that they have just obtained a one-way ticket to hell. Kalus speaks up, and his voice echoes through the room as he declares that all intruders must die. Fear grips Shin, and he turns around to run, but as he is running off, he is shocked to see Emery running towards danger instead. With a smile on his face, Emery dashes toward the monster as he considers him the perfect opponent to help him get stronger. As Omori prepares to face off against Kalus, a red flame erupts from his body as he reignites his fighting spirit. At the same time, Shin calls out to Omori asking if he's planning to die and clearly makes it known that he doesn't want to get dragged into this impossible mess. Meanwhile, the ever-clueless Buko is more clueless than he was when they arrived. As he observes the scene unfold right in front of him, he wonders if it's just his imagination or if Emery's body is burning red. Remembering his promise to become stronger, Buko immediately announces that he's joining the fight. Shin is shocked to hear this and asks if he's also insane. At the same time, Emery strategizes and plans to land a few hits just to gauge Kalus's movements and adapt accordingly. Unfortunately, his plans are ruined when Buko charges in with his shield activated. Seeing that Buko is about to ruin his plans, Omori tries to stop him, but Buko activates Shield Rush, causing him to swiftly rush past before Omori can stop him. Buko is determined to continue on his path to do the job of a tank, which is to charge straight to the front lines at the start of a battle. He soon gets closer to Kalus and says he'll create an opening for Omori. However, the moment Buko gets near him, Kalus easily shatters his shield in a single hit, pushing him back. Without giving him the chance to catch his breath, Kalus then kicks Buko into a wall, causing him to lose a few pounds. Seeing how easily it knocked down a B-rank tank with a single hit, Shin concludes that Kalis is above their pay grade. In fact, Bucko is incredibly lucky because any other person would have been erased from that hit. Admitting they're sitting ducks, he decides to abandon this sinking ship of a team and retreat on his own. However, before leaving, he casts Bucko a glance and silently promises to visit his grave. For Shin, this is nothing personal because he's already infamous for being calculating. At the same time, Kalis attacks Amori, but he blocks it with his rusty old sword. Kalis then speaks up again, and his voice echoes through the room as he calls Amori a cocky bastard. He continues to push his blade down to crush Amori, but Amori manages to hold his ground. Behind them, Shin watches the whole scene unfold and is so captivated by the fact that Amori is actually fighting Kalis that he momentarily forgets about his escape plan. But Shin has no intention of helping, and since Emery is so eager to die, he hopes to stay out of it. Meanwhile, Kalis effortlessly continues to pressure Emery beneath his blade. While Emery is fighting for his life, he senses that Shin is trying to make a move. Emery already knew that Shin had chosen them from the start because he planned to take all the credit and thought they were easy targets. Suddenly, Shin leaps from behind Kalis with his flaming blades, telling Kalis to target him instead. He refuses to let Emery steal all the glory, as that would completely ruin his reputation as the leader and a noble. He then decides to strike Kalis's back, which he considers an open weak spot. Shin was hoping this would be the deciding strike so that Amori wouldn't steal all the credit. But his stupid sneak attack ends up giving 0 results, leaving him wondering if Kalis is a high magic defense monster. At the same time, Amori is frustrated that Shin ruined his plan, and before Shin can make his escape, Kalis grabs him with one hand. Seeing that Kalis is distracted, Amori immediately pushes his sword back and leaps forward. With a single strike, he chops off the same arm that Kalis used to grab Shin, who is just shocked that Amori actually cut off an arm. As soon as the hand is detached, Shin is set free and drops to the ground with a thud, almost breaking his peaches. Emery and Kalis then begin a fierce battle of swords while Shin watches them from behind. He's amazed that even at full power, he couldn't deal a single damage to Kalis. Yet Emery used a ragged sword to slice off its arm in a single strike. Meanwhile, Kalis continues to relentlessly attack Amori, who manages to swiftly dodge every time. Just as Kalis tries to land another powerful hit, Amori darts off to the side and the attack almost takes out Shin, but he manages to dodge in time. Shin is terrified as he wonders why he's getting dragged into a fight between two monsters. Emery tells him to get out of the way if he doesn't want to be dead weight. This infuriates Shin as he quickly tries to redeem himself, saying he simply slipped. He's about to rain insults on Emery when he gives up mid-sentence because he no longer feels confident calling Emery trash anymore. Shin finally admits to himself that Emery is really strong, and that is an undeniable fact.